Esiet sveicināti Sargs.lv skatītāji! Ņemot vērā, ka Rīgā pašlaik norisinās dronu samits, šodien pie mums viesojas doktora Oleksandra Moloja, viena no vadošajām starptautiskajām ekspertēm aviācijas drošības, cilvēku faktoru un bezpilotu sistēmu jomā. Viņa ir pirmā, kura veikusi uz pierādījumiem balstītu pētījumu par dronu izmantošanu Krievijas karā pret Ukrainu. Sarunā ar viņu centīsimies saprast, vai droni nākotnē aizstās klasiskos gaisa spēkus, kā šī tehnoloģija maina militāro domāšanu un kādai jābūt valstu gatavībai šajā jaunajā realitātē. So, thank you for finding a time for this interview.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. I think we're gonna start about evolution of drones. How would you describe it from civilian use to precision military tool? It is nowadays how we see in war in Ukraine.
Look, I think that has been absolutely unprecedented use of drones and how that evolved. So if we think about, look, drone on its own, like the tool, is not really a new thing. So we can look back like 100 years ago, like 4 decades ago, and there were some attempts into development of these systems. But I think the way how the technology has evolved and all those capabilities that are present today, they really help in different domains, whether it's humanitarian, whether it's high-risk environments in terms of supporting this industry. Like there are so many different use cases, but more obvious the use of drones we've seen in the war in Ukraine. And that was the first war where the drones were used to such extent and on such scale, and every day it's evolving. So we can see the drones have shifted from a simple observer in the sky, like intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance drones, to an active combatant on the field, where the uncrewed systems, including multi-domain uncrewed systems, UGVs, USV, they all performing the tasks to save the warfighter, because the warfighter is really at the center, and it is important that we save their lives. So it's always great to put that machine on the front line at the battlefield to perform the most risky tasks. So it has evolved in different ways. We also can see a lot of tasks that would be dangerous for a human to perform. For example, according to the last year's statistic, there were approximately 200,000 square kilometers of Ukraine territory mined. And of course, it's challenging for a person to do that, to identify it and to demine. And we've seen a lot of uncrewed systems that were quite successful in this space. Another part is also humanitarian and search and rescue missions that the drones can perform. If we remember the blown of Kakhovka Dam in Ukraine a few years ago, so drones were the only tool that could transport medications and food and supplies, and even transport people to save their lives as well. So I think that really, if drones are used for good, you know, that they can help, but we know that they also can hurt.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say how this war has reshaped global thinking about drones in warfare?
Right. I think that the use of drones has changed. So from previous use of large drones like Reaper and Triton, you know, like those systems that had multiple payloads, and there were specific mission for them, but were limited. The drones were used also in Nagorno-Karabakh war, in the recent ones, and some others. But again, the scale and the innovation and adaptation battle that has been shown in the war in Ukraine really demonstrated that shift. So I think that it has become like a template for the asymmetric warfare as we've seen in Ukraine, and it really saved lives. So, you know, if we think about it, it's very hard to prepare, it's very hard to be perfectly ready for any conflict. And you may prepare in one way and really rely on some legacy systems, but you know, when the war is at your doorstep, so you really need to speed up, you need to innovate, and necessity is the mother of invention. And if you think about Ukraine as the second largest country in Europe, so with 1,000 kilometers front line, so you need to protect at every spot. So drones were those systems that actually saved lives and were the only tool at some places that the frontline, the warfighters were using. And I think it's important not to underestimate that use and the importance what these systems, more broadly even robotic and autonomous systems, bring, because they have shaped the battlefield. I think there has been quite a lot of evolution and continuous innovation cycle, ranges 2 weeks, 3 months. We can't really talk in terms of the specific dates, but that's what we see. It's always a continuous innovation. And think about in 2022, from no such weapon as FPV drone, first-person view drone, to 4.5 million drones in 2025. So, but also everything takes time, and I think that's important thing that we need to realize. And I think other countries, the difference is that they have time, and other countries can prepare, can think and support Ukraine, but also work with and learn from Ukraine on the technology, and together develop, together test and evaluate those systems. And of course it's a key to have those systems that are quite cheap, they're relatively cheap, they're easy to learn to operate, and anyone can become a drone operator. And I think that's another thing. So the entry level to become a drone operator is quite low, although you need to have specific training, and there is an importance of training, but it's rather easier to learn to operate a drone rather than an aircraft, right?
And so would you say it's equalizing other small nations such as Latvia with other superpowers?
Yeah, I think definitely we can see that even the nation compared to such formidable force as Ukraine unfortunately has to fight really against any odds, have shown that this system, the innovation technologies is that key that provide force multiplier and cost multiplier, and especially in the long conflict. Cost is a key. So first, to be able to defend itself, to defend your own country, and to leverage those capabilities that are easy to get, because of course it's great, there is no doubt that legacy systems work well, and you need both. It's all about that balance between high powerful, expensive systems, legacy systems I would call them, but also cheap and expendable that you can just pay and you just really don't care if you lose them, but you can protect them yourself.
And how would you say in the future we're going to see more on crewed systems than nowadays, or there's still going to be conventional Air Force or no?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, because I think the future is now. So we are talking about emerging technologies, but how long they will be emerge? So I think they're already here, and that's the first thing that everyone needs to realize, that the future is here. The new technology has already reshaped the battlefield. So I always say that any future conflicts will involve uncrewed systems in different ways. Context matters, and it will define a specific country based on their geographic location and other aspects that need to consider. It's about more how can we implement, how can we develop at scale, how can we produce mass of the technology that can overwhelm, and we need to stay ahead of adversary. We also need to watch what the adversaries are doing, and the message is clear. There are lots of production towards development of more drones and broader robotic and autonomous systems, that drones will be everywhere, in the air, in the land, and at sea, and also the combination and actually the fusion of those systems, like we have seen in Ukraine. The example would be Lipsy battle in 2024 in December, when the ground vehicles, uncrewed ground vehicles and uncrewed aerial systems were working in concert and did an assault and won. So that was, again, we can see lots of firsts It's great, but Ukraine is leading that innovation and that change in the battlefield. So this real environment, there is no testing labs, there's no hackathons. It's about, again, that saving lives. And I think we will see the systems, and we need to ensure that we look at the challenges and we look at the opportunities and capabilities, and also we are able to counter those systems. That's as important as drones itself.
So there's not going to be like robots against robots. There's still going to be humans in future warfare.
I think the trend generally, it will be great to have robots against robots at the front line. Again, we don't want the warfighters at that zero line, so there is always needs to be a different, more strategically and operationally, depending on the different, again, territories and the ways how that could be operated, and all those TTPs in place. But I think we want to see, when I say we, I think Ukrainians and all supporters, European countries and allies, including Australia and international supporters, we do want to see those systems in place. But I think the challenge is always in a peacetime mentality. Of course, we need to consider all their consequences that we want to deal, and at the moment it could be unknown. But these systems have already been tested in Ukraine. They've already been used, so they've already been scaled and produced. And again, those examples, a combination of uncrewed systems in the sea as well as air, those combo, so that really will be an important part. So I think we will see it, and it hasn't been to full extent shown in the war in Ukraine, but maybe future conflicts will further develop. And there are many challenges as well, the opportunities. So if we not risk to try these systems, I think we won't know, but developments will be there. However, I do believe that the human should be still at that final point of engagement on the decision made, but the uncrewed systems are great supporters.
And talking about humans and drone operators, you led search on cognitive workload for drone operators. And how would you say, how should military training evolve to prepare drone crews for increasingly autonomous and complex missions?
Well, obviously, so when we get back to the point of human factors and human performance limitations, so we do need to recognize and accept the fact that there are some limits in cognitive workload, fatigue, stress, and so on and so forth. So there are so many different aspects that can really affect the human performance, and that's just a human nature. We need to accept the fact that humans make errors, and again, we need to think about how to prevent from any consequences or negative consequences to occur. And in my previous research and current research that I'm doing on cognitive workload, I think the key part, we do recognize that, let's say, UAS operators or sensor operators work under high cognitive load. So the key question is, how do we enable, how can we design the systems and train the operators to ensure that they understand the information that, you imagine just you watch the screen for sustained time, for a long time, for hours, not days. So, and of course, as well as a high cognitive load, the low cognitive load as well, as dangerous as the optimal one. So I think first of all is important to train operators and in a way to become experienced and know what to do, but also to understand what complex situations are there, so to continuously working towards that. So I think that how that affects, of course, it reduces performance, which means they just won't notice a specific threat when they need to. And the question as we are evolving towards more autonomous systems as well is that human-machine interaction that matters, and really just need to think about those systems. We can call them artificial intelligence, but more in decision support. So how can we provide those tools to the operators to support their decision making? And I think the speed is a key. And if we think about some of their AI-based technology, similar to automation. They just help to process large volumes of information that a human brain just can't do in such a short period of time. So I think that's really important. So support decision making, support human, because the human should be at the center of these operations at the end of the day.
And how would you say the war in Ukraine has impacted the Ukraine soldiers and their mental health? Being drone operators, are they a little bit more detached from the war or same as infantry soldiers?
Look, I think when you hear that buzz in the air, I think it already means that, well, you know you are continuously watched. You're constantly watched on the battlefield because it's completely transparent, visible. So it's very hard to move from point A to point B to reinforce the trenches, you know. And that's why, you know, if some people think that, like, why Ukraine doesn't do this or that, well, try to be continuously watched and do something substantial. And if anything, moving big, you know, so it's very easy to detect and destroy. And I think coming back even like to the little drones, I think that's their success because they are small and they will be very fast and operate. But how that affects is, yeah, it's really detrimental. So of course, many soldiers. I'll talk on the Russian side though. Yeah. I'll be more happy about it.
Okay.
So I can say that up to 80% of Russian soldiers have been wounded or killed due to drone strikes. So and similar, 60-70% of their equipment has been destroyed. And I think that's important, you know, kind of factor that shows that they're actually quite significant. So when you hear that buzz, when you know just you've been watched and there is constant threat. So same Ukrainians, they do realize, and I think everyone else needs to realize that everyone in military needs to be able, well not even need, must be aware of the threat of drones. They need to know what to do when you hear the buzz, how to communicate, how to report, what to do, and so on and so forth. So, and of course, luckily, there is systems that still can, you know, protect some camouflage, some other kind of principles. But of course, it affects and psychologically and mentally, and it's important to stay resilient.
Mm-hmm. And talking about NATO. Is NATO adequately integrating lessons from Ukraine and its drone doctrines and defense planning? And can our Western manufacturing industry keep up with the rest of the world, meaning Russia and China?
Right, so let's start from the first part.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think, well, on the positive note, I think that NATO has shown the sides that they care about this topic, and of course they do learn and observe lessons from Ukraine, which is a good sign. They have created a new allied centers, whether it's a joint analysis lessons learned center or training education together with Ukraine, or air competence center, and so on and so forth. So there are centers that try to continuously learn the lessons. I think the key part though, well, I think we've learned a lot for the last 3 years. It will be great to see the outcomes, it would be great to see the change, and it would be great to see what actually has been done to address those challenges. And so I participated 2 weeks ago in the first NATO workshop, NATO S&T, on the lessons learned from Ukraine, the use of multi-use of drones. And I think that's a sign, because it's the first of the series, so that's a sign of that willingness to take those lessons on board and to make some specific changes and provide recommendations to S&T board, but also brought it to NATO countries. And what it shows that we really need to start from the top level in terms of strategies and policies that will define the future investments and will also define the ways how the systems could be interoperable. You know, that's important as well to continue exercises and training, so with allied nations and alliance, so to be able to implement and integrate them in current military exercises and continuous training for both US and counter US systems because as equally you need to use them for different purposes and also need to protect against them. And I think that's important. So of course there are different challenges, and I think time and speed is a key. So those processes probably could be changed, but I think we need to take actions today, tomorrow, and start working with Ukraine learning. So I think the most important is really work with Ukraine, learn that, but already start translating. It would be great to see some changes.
And how can you evaluate Latvia's policy on drones? Is it good? Are we keeping up with other nations?
Yeah, I think so. I think Latvian government is really committed. I think that's really that message that comes from different levels. And you know, the commitment from the Latvian government is absolutely unprecedented, even starting from support Ukraine, but also learning lessons together. And I think that's a key, that collaboration is key. Latvian government is recognizing that these uncrewed systems have shaped the battlefield, and they are working towards the development of those systems and integration so that their soldiers are protected, but also working towards indigenous technology. So in terms of development of sovereign capability, you know, that you need to be able to defend yourself, and that's a key. So of course learning with your brothers, sisters from Ukraine, but also just working towards that. So I've seen absolutely positive narratives and lots of willingness and actions from Latvia, but also even the fact that Latvia and UK lead that drone capability coalition as well brings that point of commitment from different levels. And I think that's the key. So we need to think from different perspectives. Of course, government, but also industry and even educational system. So I think that will be great to see. And probably there are lots of robotic clubs. So where they already now will be appearing. Because if we think about in Ukraine, so as part of the school program in year 10 and 11, so there is a courses Defend Ukraine, and as part of it you already start learning about drones. You know, let's say in year 10 you just learn about those systems, but in year 11 you are using them. So I think they do see it, even following the end of the war, of course, on Ukrainian terms. There is that future for drones, and it's like that future of like our phones and iPads that we are using. So I think that's just that key that will be really used for different purposes and everyday life. So I think we need to think about that continuity and how can we prepare that force for the new technology coming. Because where smart technology needs smart people.
Exactly. And the final question, how do you see the future of drones? Is there going to be more AI and stealth or swarm coordination? How do you see it?
So I move again from that point that, of course, automation does some aspects well, and a human does some aspects well. So moving towards autonomous systems and AI. So I think they really help with taking some of those aspects in terms of processing large volumes of information. And I would see them, from two perspectives. So first is like decision support systems when we think about AI, or some machine learning algorithms that help with identification and provide information. And in military terms, if we think about decision-making process, it's all about that OODA loop, right? So it's basically observe, orient, decide, and act. And AI helps with speeding up that process, with providing the information faster, which means you can make decisions faster at different levels, tactical, strategic, by commanders, and so on and so forth. So I do see lots of companies in Ukraine and overseas, so probably in Latvia as well, are developing AI-based drones. I think it's important, though, that we're not just caught up in the buzzword of AI, but we really think about that professional and really the capability that works. So, and what do we call that AI, and what does it do? So from target recognition on drones, to autonomous navigation and so on and so forth. And again, as we talk about, there is this movement towards smart technology and towards more autonomous systems. again, when we zoom out from just drones, I would think a bit broader, like robotic and autonomous system. Today we have drones, tomorrow that will be a robot dog and some other robotic system that will be developed. But I think the key, like why do we do that, is again just take away that warfighter from the front line, but also to be able to perform missions in a fast and effective and efficient ways. So, and I think that's probably the future, but we'll see that may or may not change.
Yes, thank you very much for this interesting conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.